as we talked about in the first half of the show, and speaking with Transport Minister Simeon Brown, we touched first on the 11.5 cent a litre fuel tax for Auckland. That was costing the motorists in Auckland $150 million a year since it was introduced in 2018, and that ended on Monday. Now, the Automobile Association says it will continue to monitor Auckland fuel prices to ensure that the fuel companies do pass their savings on to customers. And one man that will be keeping his eye close on them is Terry Collins, AA's Senior Policy Advisor. And good to welcome him back to the show. Hello, Terry.
Good afternoon.
Well, day 3, Terry, it seems all is going to plan. The major fuel companies say that they've updated their prices and that most of them even moved before Monday and was offering up the discounts on Sunday night. So,
yes, I mean, even on Saturday. I've only had one feedback from one of our members, and that was because one of the low-cost operators dropped the price down on Saturday, put it back up on Sunday, and then dropped it again on Monday. And they were thinking, it was a bit disingenuous. But it's really what I was saying is, well, he was prepared to drop that early on the Saturday to capture some trade that he knew if he didn't get was going to not be there Monday.
Right, okay. But mind you, Terry, they'd be a bit silly, wouldn't they? They'd be aware now that motorists in Auckland know to sneak high prices. But they do say too that there are fluctuating reasons why oil goes up and down. So, I mean, we will still see some prices go up, won't we?
Yeah, we will. Look, earlier this month or last month in June, APEC put out some announcements which was along the lines of they may cease some of their voluntary production cuts, which would have meant more supply on the market, which would have meant cheaper fuel. Within a week, it was down to US $77 a barrel. It's now at 86, so it's rebounded back because they came out with a statement about a week later saying the word was may, not will. No, and there's no guarantee it'll happen, and the market kind of overread that, and it's bounced up. Plus, there's a couple of things that's happening now. It's the northern driving season, which means that North America goes on its holidays, and it's summertime in Europe, and so they use more fuel. But there's another little problem. It's also entering the hurricane season, and that's around the Gulf of Mexico where a lot of the US refineries are. And this time of the year, sometimes one or two of those will get hit, knock a bit of production out, and that can have an impact on our fuel prices.
Gosh, you don't even think, most people wouldn't even think about that, Terry. And that's why you're in the big job. In place of the fuel tax, I was talking to the minister. He said the government plans to introduce time of use charging to bill motorists at different times on sections of the motorways, obviously during peak time. Now, he didn't say when this was going to happen, and he was he really wanted to push the fact that this wasn't a revenue gathering policy. It was to make sure that, we ease congestion. To which I said to Simeon, but people will be charged. So it is a revenue gathering, isn't it? I mean, what is it a fair compromise, do you think?
Well, if he says he's going to replace a tax with a congestion charging, then it's obviously revenue gathering. I mean, you can't say, hey, I'm going to replace one form of revenue with another form of revenue, but I'm not going to call it not doing it for revenue purposes. That's a bit disingenuous, if you ask me. Look, I think congestion charging is some way off. And why I say that is because the government's trying to look at a variety of policies all looped together, and it's about changing the way that we collect our money for our National Land Transport Fund. That tax on petrol is paid per litre, so the more efficient vehicles get, the less tax take they get. When you own a diesel or a battery electric vehicle, you pay by the distance you travel, a road user charge. And they've announced that they want to move completely to road user charges. Now, if you start paying by road user charges, it could be very possible that they have some form of telemetric system in your car which kind of tells you how far you've gone, when you're on the road. It can be used for collecting that to build the roads. It could also pay your ACC levy. It could also pay your congestion charging because it'll know where you are at the time of the day and where you are. And it could also be used for tolling. So kind of the big AI thing or the big computer thing happening, it could all be rolling into one big kind of system based on how often you travel and where you travel and what time you travel is how much you pay for it.
Wow. Yeah, that would be, I mean, obviously would hit people that do drive for a living, your truck companies and your Ubers and all that stuff, couriers. But
yeah, well, they pay the road user charges now, and they do it based on weight, and it's continued to do so. They pay up by the use of fuel, so we're doing it. No, we're paying it now. We've got to have some way to fund our roads. We don't.
That's true.
The thing about these, they're called a hypothecated tax. They are collected for the purposes of using them on our roads. So everything should go towards fixing up our roads and doing so. But we can't. Congestion charging is we just can't build enough roads for the vehicles we've got. And when we tend to build roads, we tend to fill them up with cars. And so it's kind of a catch-22. You need other alternatives like public transport or some other mechanisms. Like London, they have congestion charging for the city, but they've got the tube. They've got all, and they're used to hopping on trains and undergrounds and buses and going everywhere.
I know.
They've got a great system.
I mean, gosh, I've been there for a while now, well over a decade, but I lived, as you do, you live on the tube or on the buses. You just don't even think. I didn't see a car for about a year. I mean, I wasn't in a car for about a year.
Look, I've been to Paris and with the metro. I've been to London and used them. I lived in Sydney for a while, and they complain about their system, and I think it's great. Trains and buses that are regular and go everywhere.
Did you say, come to New Zealand?
Yeah, well, I never had a car for 20 months.
Wow. It's amazing, isn't it? And you don't miss it, but, because you can get around. Can we talk about this reversing of the free driver's licence resit tests kicking in next Monday? So you get only, obviously, one free resit, which is, I think that's fair. I think that would be a thumbs up from the AA.
Yeah, it is. Look, the previous government, with really good intentions, recognised that some of the people who were driving around without licences, the price was a bit of a barrier. They'd sit it once, they couldn't get it, they didn't go back. And so they ended up getting caught driving without licensing and all the other problems that was involved with it. So in their wisdom, they thought, right, if we lower that barrier of cost, we'll get more people doing it. The unintended consequences, we had people sometimes sitting the test nearly 20 times. I think the most was about 22 from record. We went from about 2 weeks waiting time to, because it varies from region to region, but around the 3-month period, which really wasn't acceptable. And like all things, to value something, you've got to have a bit of skin in the game. Yeah. So letting them go once, and if they miss it, have a free sit. We've got no problem with that. But then charging them, well, that puts a real incentive on if they know they've only got one more chance to make sure that they actually do study the road code and they understand it. And for all of us, that's the best outcome.